The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the faint tang of snow from the upper peaks. A low hum of prayer wheels spun in rhythmic harmony with the whisper of the wind, a melody older than memory itself. Elias Cain sat cross-legged on a worn stone platform outside the monastery, his breath merging with the rhythm of the world around him. Eyes closed, his weathered face softened as he exhaled, the tension of past lifetimes dissolving with each cycle. He was a man at peace, and yet the cosmos had other plans. Far below, the valley stretched into a tapestry of greens and silvers, punctuated by the glinting threads of rivers winding their way toward the horizon. Above him, the peaks loomed like ancient sentinels, their jagged crowns painted gold by the sun. This sanctuary was both his refuge and his crucible, where the shattered fragments of his past life as a scientist were slowly reshaped into something whole. Then came the sound, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the very marrow of the air. Elias's eyes snapped open. It wasn't the drone of a distant plane or the rush of an avalanche. This was something alien. He stood, the stone platform cold beneath his bare feet, and gazed skyward. At first there was only the blinding blue expanse, but then, like ink bleeding into water, a vast shadow materialized. The object was enormous, sleek and crystalline, shimmering with prismatic light that danced across the sky like a second aurora. It moved with a grace that defied its size, descending silently toward the monastery. Elias's heart quickened. His monk's robes, frayed at the edges, fluttered in the growing breeze. The wind carried a scent he couldn't place, metallic yet oddly sweet. The prayer wheels groaned in protest as the hum grew louder, reverberating through the stones of the ancient monastery. With a sudden crack, the ground trembled. Tiles shook loose from the temple roof, clattering to the courtyard below. Elias steadied himself, gripping a nearby pillar. "Well," he muttered under his breath, "this is new." The vessel came to a halt just above the courtyard, hovering with an eerie stillness. Its surface was a maze of crystalline facets, refracting sunlight into cascades of color that painted the temple walls in hues of emerald, sapphire, and gold. A section of the vessel rippled and dissolved, revealing a group of figures descending on beams of light. They were tall, easily 8 feet, with elongated, angular bodies that gleamed as though sculpted from living quartz. Their eyes glowed faintly, twin orbs of shifting light that seemed to pierce through reality itself. Despite their otherworldly appearance, there was something profoundly dignified about them, as if they carried the weight of entire civilizations in their crystalline frames. Elias stepped forward cautiously. The air around the beings shimmered with faint heat, distorting their edges like a mirage. One of them, standing slightly ahead of the others, bowed with a precision that was almost mechanical. "Elias Cain," the figure spoke, its voice layered and resonant, like a choir compressed into a single note. "We have traveled across the expanse of stars seeking you." Elias blinked. "I'm flattered," he said, his voice calm but tinged with dry humor. "Though I have to wonder, why me?" The leader straightened, its crystalline body catching the sunlight in dazzling arrays. "We are the Eltherans, custodians of logic and truth. Our records speak of humanity's profound mastery of the cosmos, of your kind's ability to commune with the forces that govern existence. You are said to have bent reality itself to your will, crafting order from chaos." Elias tilted his head, bemused. "I think you've been reading the wrong books." Another Eltheran stepped forward, slightly smaller and more fluid in movement. Its tone was softer, almost reverent. "We have studied your mythologies, the chronicles of Prometheus, who brought fire to the mortals, of Shiva, who dances the cycle of creation and destruction, of your gods who command storms, time, and death itself. These are not merely stories. They are the truths of your species, are they not?" Elias resisted the urge to laugh outright. Instead, he folded his arms and considered them carefully. Their expressions, or what he could interpret as expressions, held no trace of irony. They were deadly serious. For a moment, the absurdity of it all almost made him dismiss them entirely. But then he saw it, the faint flicker of desperation in their luminous eyes. You genuinely believe this, don't you? He said, his tone softening. That these myths are historical fact? The leader inclined its head. Your records align with our own. They hold the key to the resonance, the energy that binds the cosmos. It is said that humanity's wisdom is unparalleled in this regard. We require your guidance. Elias sighed, his breath visible in the chill air. The cosmic irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a man who had abandoned science for spirituality, now being asked to play a role he barely believed in himself. You said you require my guidance, he echoed. For what exactly? The leader's crystalline form dimmed briefly, as if shadowed by a thought. Our world is imperiled. The phenomenon you call the Starquake threatens to unravel the harmonic structures of our star system. Without intervention, we will cease to exist. The smaller Eltherin added, We have exhausted all logical approaches. Technology alone cannot solve this. Your myths and rituals may contain the resonance patterns we need to stabilize the cosmos. Elias stared at them for a long moment. His gaze drifted to the ship, then back to the temple, its prayer wheels still spinning against the backdrop of crumbling stone. The weight of their request settled on him like a mountain. I need you to understand something, he began slowly. Human myths, they aren't what you think they are. They're symbolic, not literal. They point to truths, yes, but not in the way you're imagining. The leader was silent, its crystalline eyes fixed on him. Then, after a pause, if there is even a fragment of truth within them, we must find it. Our existence depends on it. Elias rubbed his temples, a wry smile creeping onto his face. Of course it does. He gestured toward the ship. All right, I'll help. But don't say I didn't warn you when this turns out to be more metaphorical than you're hoping. As he stepped toward the beam of light that would carry him aboard, the wind picked up again, tugging at his robes. He glanced back at the monastery, its weathered stones bathed in a kaleidoscope of colors from the alien vessel. A strange feeling stirred in his chest, a mix of trepidation and quiet resolve. The Aeltherin leader bowed again. Thank you, Elias Cain. Together, we shall uncover the truth. Elias smirked, stepping into the beam. Let's hope the cosmos is feeling generous. As the ship ascended, the prayer wheels below slowed to a stop, their hum fading into the void. Above, the stars awaited. The crystalline vessel hummed with life as it soared through the void. Inside, Elias Cain marveled at the ship's stark, alien beauty. The walls shimmered like liquid quartz, faint light rippling across their surfaces. But there were no visible seams or controls, just an endless expanse of gleaming symmetry. The air smelled faintly of ozone, crisp and sterile, and his every footstep echoed faintly, as if the ship itself was listening. He couldn't help but feel like a stain on an otherwise pristine canvas. His monk's robes were frayed at the hem, and his boots tracked in faint smudges of Himalayan dirt. He glanced down self-consciously and muttered, Do you guys even have dirt here? Or do you sterilize your planets too? Saren, the smaller Eltherin who had spoken earlier, turned its glowing eyes toward him. Its crystalline body emitted a faint chime as it moved, a sound halfway between wind chimes and the tinkle of falling snow. We consider organic decay inefficient. Most of our surfaces are self-repairing. Dirt is unnecessary. Elias chuckled. Well, there goes half of Earth's charm. The leader, who had introduced itself as Lithor, was farther ahead, its angular frame glowing faintly. It radiated an air of authority and precision that was almost suffocating. Lethor had said little since they'd boarded, but its silence was oppressive, like a judgment hovering just out of reach. The ship shuddered, and Elias gripped a nearby surface for balance. The sensation wasn't turbulence, but something more profound, as though the fabric of space itself had hiccuped. Saren glanced at him and explained, We are crossing a harmonic threshold, a spatial resonance that aligns with our star system. You may feel disoriented. Oh, I'm way past disoriented, Elias muttered, his stomach lurching. But thanks for the warning. Moments later, the ship decelerated smoothly, and through a translucent section of the wall, Elias caught his first glimpse of the Aelthiran homeworld. His breath hitched. The planet was a luminous sphere, its surface a latticework of glowing veins that pulsed faintly, like the neural pathways of some great cosmic brain. Vast, crystalline spires rose from its surface, catching the light of a nearby sun and scattering it into cascading rainbows. Between the spires stretched sprawling plains of smooth, reflective material, gleaming with a sterile perfection that sent a shiver down Elias's spine. "Beautiful," he admitted softly. "But cold. Doesn't seem like the kind of place you'd want to take a picnic." Saren tilted its head, a gesture Elias had begun to associate with curiosity. "It is efficient. Every structure serves a purpose. Disorder and redundancy are eliminated." "Yeah, I got that." Elias's gaze lingered on the gleaming expanses below. "But where's the life, the chaos, the imperfections?" Saren didn't answer. Lither's voice interrupted instead, sharp and authoritative. "Prepare yourself, Elias Cain. We are about to descend." The crystalline figures guided him to a circular platform near the rear of the ship. As the vessel slowed, the platform glowed faintly, and the air around him grew heavy, vibrating softly against his skin. A beam of light enveloped him, and in a heartbeat the ship dissolved from view, replaced by the surface of the Aelthiran world. The first thing he noticed was the silence. Not the soft, natural quiet of the monastery, but an unnatural stillness, as if the entire planet had been muted. There was no wind, no rustle of leaves, no hum of insects, just the faint mechanical thrumming of distant energy sources. The air was cool and dry, almost metallic, and the ground beneath him was smooth to the point of eeriness. Elias took a step forward, his boots scuffing faintly on the polished surface. The spire they had landed beside towered above him, its crystalline surface so sheer it seemed to disappear into the sky. Around its base stretched an expanse of pale, luminous ground, dotted with geometric shapes that Elias guessed were buildings. If this was a city, it was the strangest one he'd ever seen. No streets, no trees, no signs of life. "Well," Elias said, his voice echoing faintly, "welcome to the uncanny valley." Saren gestured for him to follow, its crystalline body chiming softly as it moved. "This way." They led him into the base of the spire, where the walls glowed faintly, casting an ethereal light that made the air shimmer. As they moved deeper inside, Elias's skin prickled. The atmosphere grew heavier, as though the very air carried an unspoken weight. The chamber they entered was vast and circular, its walls adorned with angular carvings that pulsed faintly with light. At the center stood an intricate structure, a towering column of crystal inlaid with lines of energy that seemed to shift and flow like liquid light. A faint hum filled the space, so low it was almost imperceptible, but it resonated in Elias's bones, making him uneasy. "What is this place?" he asked. Saren stepped forward. "Our hall of knowledge. It contains the sum total of our civilization's understanding." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Looks fancy. But where are the books?" Lither's tone was clipped. "We do not use primitive methods of information storage. Our knowledge is encoded directly into the crystalline lattice. It can be accessed instantaneously." "Of course it can," Elias said, folding his arms. "Because why make anything easy to read?" Saren approached the central column, placing a hand against its surface. The light within the structure shifted, coalescing into a three-dimensional display of symbols and diagrams that hung in the air like ghostly projections. Elias squinted at the symbols, trying to make sense of them, but they might as well have been ancient runes. "These are the records," Saren explained. "Fragments of what we believe to be the resonance ritual. It was abandoned long ago when our people turned to technology." Elias stepped closer, the faint hum of the column vibrating against his skin. "And you think this resonance is what will save your planet?" Lither's voice was firm. "It is the only viable solution, but the ritual itself is incomplete. We require your insights to reconstruct it." Elias frowned, studying the swirling symbols. "And why do you think I can help? Because I meditate in the mountains? Because humans tell stories about gods and monsters? Because, Saren said softly, you understand things we do not. You see meaning where we see chaos. Elias snorted. That's a polite way of saying I'm good at making stuff up. The column pulsed faintly, its light dimming. A tremor rippled through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. Elias glanced down, then back at Saren. What was that? Saren's glow dimmed slightly, a sign of unease. The Starquake. Its effects are beginning to reach us. Lythor turned toward Elias, its tone sharper than before. We are running out of time. Your cooperation is not optional. Elias felt the weight of their gazes and sighed. All right, let's see what we can dig up in this hall of knowledge. But I'm telling you now, this isn't going to be some magical fix. If your resonance ritual works, it's because your people built it, not because humans have some cosmic hotline. Saren tilted its head again, curious. Cosmic hotline. Never mind, Elias said, shaking his head. Let's get started. As he turned back to the column, the hum deepened, and a faint chill swept through the chamber. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the spire, something stirred, a low, resonant sound that sent a shiver up Elias's spine. He wasn't sure if it was the Starquake or something else, but either way, he had the distinct feeling that he was standing on the edge of something far greater than himself, and it was watching. The tremor passed, leaving an uneasy stillness in its wake. Elias glanced around the chamber, the crystalline walls no longer glowing with their steady rhythm. Instead, faint cracks spidered across the surface, lines of imperfection marring the seamless perfection of the Elthuran's Hall of Knowledge. Is this normal? Elias asked, his voice echoing faintly. No, Saren said, its crystalline glow dimmer than before. The Starquake's influence is accelerating. Lythor turned sharply, its angular form rigid with tension. Then we have even less time than we thought. We cannot afford delays. Elias rubbed the bridge of his nose, exhaling deeply. No pressure, right? Just figure out an ancient alien ritual with zero context and save the universe. Easy. Your sarcasm is unhelpful, Lythor snapped. Neither is your attitude, Elias shot back, meeting Lythor's glowing gaze. Look, if you want me to pull some ancient wisdom out of thin air, you're going to need to give me more than glowing symbols and a death countdown. The tension in the room was palpable, a clash of wills that felt like it could shatter the delicate balance holding the chamber together. Saren stepped between them, its voice soft but firm. Enough. We all want the same outcome. Arguing will not get us there. Lythor hesitated, then inclined its head, the light within its body flickering faintly. Agreed. Elias, what do you require? Elias folded his arms, glancing at the holographic display still hovering in the air. The swirling symbols looked like they were trying to form a coherent pattern, but couldn't quite settle into place. First, I need to understand what these symbols mean. They're not just random shapes. They're trying to tell a story. Saren gestured toward the column, its crystalline hand brushing the surface. They are fragments of our ancient traditions. We abandoned them when we chose the path of logic. Why? Elias asked, genuinely curious. Did it stop working? No, Saren admitted, but it was deemed inefficient. The rituals were abstract, imprecise. Our ancestors believed in concepts we could not quantify: connection, balance, harmony with forces beyond our understanding. Over time, such beliefs were replaced by technology. Elias ran a hand through his hair. And now you're telling me you need that abstract, unquantifiable stuff to save your world? Oh, the irony. A faint tremor ran through the floor again, this one stronger than the last. The air in the chamber grew heavier, carrying an almost metallic tang that stung Elias's nostrils. The hum of the column wavered, its glow dimming. Focus, Lythor said, its tone clipped. Time is not on our side. Elias stepped closer to the column, squinting at the symbols. His mind churned, piecing together fragments of his own knowledge. Human myths, ancient stories, spiritual practices. Slowly, a thread of understanding began to emerge. These aren't just instructions, he said, his voice thoughtful. They're metaphors, stories wrapped in symbols. They're not telling you what to do, they're telling you how to feel, how to connect. Lyther's glow flickered sharply. Feelings are irrelevant. We need precise actions. Elias turned, his expression a mix of frustration and amusement. That's your problem, Lithor. You're looking for a machine manual, and this isn't one. This is about resonance, finding harmony within yourselves, your world, and the cosmos. Saren tilted its head. But how do we achieve that? Elias smiled faintly, his mind flashing back to the monastery, the hours spent meditating in silence. We start by listening. The chamber was still as Elias sat cross-legged on the smooth floor, surrounded by a small group of Aeltherans, including Saren and Lithor. The air was heavy with expectation, the faint hum of the column now a distant murmur. "All right," Elias began, his voice calm. "Close your eyes." The Aeltherans hesitated. Lithor crossed its arms. "Why?" "Because you're too busy looking outward," Elias replied. "You need to look inward. Close your eyes. Trust me." Reluctantly, the Aeltherans complied, their crystalline eyelids sliding shut. The light emanating from their bodies dimmed slightly, casting the room into a softer glow. "Now," Elias said, his voice steady, "breathe." "We do not need oxygen," Lithor interjected. Elias sighed. "Fine, don't breathe, but focus. Find your rhythm, the pulse of your own energy. Feel it." The Aeltherans sat in silence, their forms eerily still. Elias closed his eyes, centering himself, his breath steady and deep. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the chamber. At first, there was nothing. Then gradually, a faint vibration filled the air, so subtle it was almost imperceptible. Elias opened his eyes and saw the glow of the Aeltherans shifting, their light flickering in time with the vibrations. "Good," he said softly. "Now let it grow. Don't force it. Just let it flow." Saren's glow brightened, a soft, warm light that pulsed in harmony with the vibrations. The others followed suit, their light growing steadier, more unified. Even Lithor, reluctant as it was, began to emit a faint, rhythmic glow. The chamber seemed to respond, the cracks in the walls pulsing faintly with light, as if the room itself was coming alive. Elias watched, a small smile tugging at his lips. There it is. That's resonance. But the moment was short-lived. A sudden violent tremor shook the chamber, throwing Elias off balance. The Aeltherans' glow faltered, their rhythm disrupted. The hum of the column grew louder, harsher, like a warning. "What's happening?" Elias shouted, scrambling to his feet. Saren's voice was tense. "The Starquake. Its effects are destabilizing the energy field." Lithor turned sharply. "We cannot remain here. The structure is compromised." Elias looked at the column, its light flickering wildly. He could feel the energy in the room spiraling out of control, a chaotic tangle of vibrations that threatened to tear the space apart. "No," he said firmly. "This is exactly where we need to be. The chaos is part of it, just like your myths, your history. You've been trying to fight it, but you need to embrace it." Lithor glared at him, its glow sharp and cold. "You speak in riddles, human." "It's not a riddle," Elias shot back. "It's balance, chaos and order, logic and feeling. They're not enemies. They're partners. If you can find harmony between them, you'll find the answer." The room trembled again, and a deep, resonant sound echoed through the chamber, low and haunting. It wasn't just noise. It was a call, ancient and powerful, reverberating through their very beings. Saren stepped forward, its light steady despite the chaos. "I believe him." Lithor hesitated, its form rigid. Finally it nodded. "Very well. What do we do?" Elias smiled faintly, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We listen." The group sat once more, their lights flickering as they focused. Elias closed his eyes, letting the vibrations wash over him, feeling the rhythm of the Starquake mingling with their own. Slowly the chaos began to subside, the vibrations aligning into a steady pulse. The column's light steadied, its hum softening into a harmonious tone. The cracks in the walls began to close, the chamber glowing with renewed energy. When Elias opened his eyes, he saw the Altherans glowing in perfect unison, their lights pulsing like the heartbeat of a single being. For the first time, he saw something like wonder in Lithor's luminous eyes. "You did it," Saren said softly, its voice filled with awe. Elias shook his head. "Number, you did. You just needed a little push." The harmony was fragile, a delicate thread holding back the chaos. But it was a start. And for the first time, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice firm. "This is just the beginning." The harmony that had stabilized the Hall of Knowledge felt like a fragile truce. As the pulsing light settled into an uneasy rhythm, Elias Cain stood amidst the crystalline Altherans, their glowing forms radiating an almost palpable tension. The Starquake's resonance continued to hum through the chamber, its low vibrations rattling the edges of Elias's teeth. "This isn't going to hold forever," Elias muttered, wiping the sweat beading at his temples. "We bought ourselves some time, but that's all it is, a down payment." Saren's glow dimmed slightly, an expression Elias had come to recognize as worry. "The cracks are returning faster than before. We cannot remain passive." Lithor's voice was sharp, like the chiming clash of broken glass. "We require a permanent solution. Human, if this is all your methods can achieve, then we've already failed." Elias turned to face Lithor, his voice calm but cutting. "You think this is the finish line? It's the starting gate. You've spent centuries trying to logic your way out of your own existence, and now you're mad because the fix isn't instant? Newsflash, Lithor. Sometimes the answer isn't in the equation, it's in the experience." Before Lithor could retort, a deafening crack split the air, and the ground trembled violently. The crystalline column at the chamber's center pulsed erratically, its light flickering as if caught in a storm. The intricate patterns of glowing symbols projected from its surface began to distort, their once perfect forms bending and twisting into chaotic shapes. "The ritual," Saren said suddenly, its voice rising with urgency. "The fragments are reacting to the Starquake. It's trying to complete itself." Elias's eyes narrowed as he studied the symbols. Amid the chaos, he could almost make out a rhythm, a pattern struggling to emerge. His pulse quickened. "It's not just reacting, it's guiding us." Lithor scoffed. "Guiding us? This randomness is chaos, not guidance." "It's not random," Elias shot back. "It's resonance. Chaos trying to find order. Your ancestors left breadcrumbs, but you buried them under centuries of logic. If we don't follow the trail now, we lose everything." Another tremor ripped through the chamber, sending shards of crystal crashing to the ground. The air grew heavy, dense with energy that buzzed against Elias's skin like static electricity. He clenched his fists, his mind racing. "We need to find the source of the ritual," Elias said, his voice firm. "Where did it start? Where did your people first connect with this resonance?" Saren glanced at Lithor, whose glow flickered uncertainly. "There is a place," Saren said hesitantly. "An ancient temple, deep within the planetary core. It predates even the oldest of our records." Lithor stiffened. "The core nexus is unstable. It has not been entered in millennia." Elias laughed grimly. "Unstable? Perfect. We'll fit right in." Saren nodded, its light steady. "I will guide you. We must move quickly." Lithor hesitated, its rigid form betraying an inner conflict. Finally it spoke. "I will accompany you. This is my responsibility as much as yours." "Glad to have you on board," Elias said with a smirk. "Let's go spelunking." The journey to the core nexus was nothing short of harrowing. The group traveled in a smaller vessel, a sleek crystalline craft that descended into the planet's interior through a series of tunnels carved into the crust. The deeper they went, the more the environment seemed to rebel against them. Tremors shook the walls, and bursts of energy crackled in the air, leaving an acrid taste on Elias's tongue. Inside the vessel, the atmosphere was tense. Saren piloted with steady precision, while Lithor stood like a sentinel, its angular body glowing faintly in the dim light. Elias sat cross-legged in the back, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "What exactly are we looking for down here?" Elias asked, breaking the silence. "A big glowing button that says, 'Fix everything'?" Saren glanced back at him, its voice calm but urgent. "The temple contains a resonance conduit. If the fragments in the Hall of Knowledge were incomplete instructions, the conduit is the key to activating the ritual. And by activating, you mean?" "Harmonizing with the Starquake," Saren explained, "redirecting its energy into a stable frequency." "Simple," Elias said dryly. "Just cosmic surgery on a dying star system." The vessel shuddered violently, throwing Elias against the side. He winced as he scrambled to his feet. "Please tell me that's just turbulence." "We've entered the resonance field," Saren said, its voice tight. "The closer we get to the conduit, the stronger the energy disruptions." "Great," Elias muttered. "Can't wait to see what's waiting at the finish line." The core nexus was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. The temple was a vast, cavernous structure, its walls carved from crystalline rock that shimmered with an eerie, otherworldly light. Columns of light arced between massive spires, crackling with energy that buzzed in the air like a swarm of invisible insects. At the center of the temple stood the resonance conduit, a towering structure that pulsed with a deep, rhythmic light. It radiated power, the vibrations so intense that Elias could feel them in his chest, his breath hitching with each pulse. "This is it," Saren said softly, its glow brightening as it stepped forward. "The heart of our world." Lither moved to stand beside Saren, its expression unreadable. "If this fails, there will be nothing left." "No pressure," Elias muttered as he approached the conduit. The energy radiating from it prickled against his skin, a mix of heat and cold that made him shiver. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "All right," he said, turning to face the group. "This is it. We need to align ourselves with the resonance, mind, body, and soul. No second-guessing, no holding back." Lither's glow flickered sharply. "Soul is an abstract concept." "Not right now, it isn't," Elias replied. "Right now, it's the only thing standing between us and oblivion." Saren stepped closer to the conduit, its light steady. "What do we do?" "Focus," Elias said. "Feel the rhythm of the conduit. Let it guide you. Don't fight it. Flow with it." The group formed a circle around the conduit, their lights flickering as they closed their eyes and focused. Elias sat cross-legged, his breath steady as he let the vibrations wash over him. The air buzzed with energy, the hum of the conduit growing louder, deeper, more resonant. At first, the connection was tenuous, a flickering thread that seemed ready to snap at any moment. But as they focused, the thread grew stronger, weaving itself into a web of light and sound. The chaos of the Starquake began to fade, its destructive energy bending, twisting, and finally aligning with the rhythm of the conduit. The chamber pulsed with light, the walls glowing brighter as the resonance grew stronger. Elias felt a surge of energy, a connection that went beyond words, beyond logic. It was as if the entire cosmos was singing, a harmony that resonated deep within his soul. "It's working," Saren whispered, its voice filled with awe. But then, a sharp crack echoed through the chamber, and the conduit shuddered violently. The energy field wavered, threatening to collapse. "Hold it!" Elias shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't lose the rhythm. Stay with it." The group focused harder, their lights pulsing in unison. The chaos of the Starquake pushed back, but they held their ground, the resonance growing stronger, brighter, more powerful. Finally, with a blinding flash, the energy stabilized, the vibrations settling into a perfect, harmonious rhythm. The chamber fell silent, the Starquake's chaos replaced by a profound stillness. Elias opened his eyes, his breath hitching as he looked around. The conduit glowed with a steady light, its energy calm and stable. The walls of the temple pulsed faintly, a soft rhythmic glow that felt like the heartbeat of a living world. "You did it," Saren said, its voice trembling with emotion. Elias shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "We did it." For the first time, even Lithor's glow softened, a faint warmth radiating from its crystalline form. Perhaps there is more to humanity than we understood. Elias chuckled, his exhaustion finally catching up with him. Yeah, well, sometimes it takes a little chaos to find the balance. The resonance conduit pulsed with a steady rhythm, a cosmic heartbeat that vibrated through the very core of the planet. The energy was no longer chaotic or destructive. It was calm, purposeful, alive. Elias stood at the base of the towering structure, his legs trembling from exhaustion, but his heart filled with a strange, quiet awe. Around him, the Aeltherans glowed softly, their crystalline forms reflecting the harmony they had achieved. The Starquake's destructive forces had been stilled, their chaotic energy redirected into a harmonious frequency that resonated through the spire and outward into the cosmos. Elias exhaled slowly, turning to face Saren and Lithor. "Well," he said, his voice rough but tinged with humor, "looks like the universe decided to give us a second chance." Saren stepped closer, its crystalline body glowing with a gentle warmth. "You brought us this chance. Without your guidance, we would have fallen into destruction." Elias shook his head, his tired smile softening. "I didn't bring anything. The answers were already here. You just forgot how to listen. All I did was hold up a mirror." Lithor approached, its glow brighter than Elias had ever seen. It regarded him with an intensity that felt different this time, not cold and calculating, but almost reverent. "Your methods defied reason. Your teachings were abstract, unquantifiable, and yet they succeeded. I owe you an apology, Elias Cain." Elias raised an eyebrow, folding his arms. "An apology? From you? Better mark the date. I think the cosmos might implode again." A faint chime escaped Saren. Laughter, Elias realized, and he couldn't help but grin. Even Lithor's light flickered faintly, as if trying to grasp humor for the first time. "I underestimated you," Lithor continued, its tone steady. "I underestimated humanity." Elias shrugged, his grin fading into something softer. "It's easy to do. We're a mess. Contradictions, chaos, emotions we don't always understand. But that's where the magic is, Lithor. Harmony doesn't mean perfection. It means finding balance in the chaos." Lithor tilted its head, considering his words. "And that balance saved us." The chamber trembled gently, but this time it wasn't the harbinger of destruction. It was the planet itself, shifting into a new equilibrium. The walls glowed faintly, their light a reflection of the stable resonance now pulsing through the core. Elias felt a tug at his chest, not fear but a bittersweet pull, like the end of a journey. "It's time for you to take it from here," he said, turning to Saren. "You've got the tools now. The question is what you're going to do with them." Saren's light brightened. "We will not forget this lesson, Elias. Our path forward will be different. Not one of pure logic, but of harmony. And don't forget to leave room for a little chaos," Elias added with a smirk. Lithor stepped forward, its towering form casting a shimmering shadow. "You have given us more than survival, Elias. You have reminded us of who we were and who we can become." Elias nodded, his smile faint but sincere. "Then don't waste it." The return to the surface was strangely quiet. The small crystalline vessel ascended through the glowing tunnels, the tremors of the Starquake now a distant memory. As they broke through to the upper atmosphere, Elias looked out at the Aeltheran landscape, its once sterile, mechanical perfection now bathed in a soft, living light. "Your world looks different," Elias said, leaning against the viewport. Saren stood beside him, its glow steady. "It is different. The resonance has altered its frequency. It is as though the planet is alive." Elias chuckled softly. "Maybe it always was. You just weren't listening." The ship docked at the spire where their journey had begun. As Elias stepped out onto the landing platform, he saw a gathering of Aeltherans waiting for them. Their crystalline bodies glowed with colors he hadn't seen before. vibrant, shifting hues that seemed to pulse in harmony with the planet itself. Lither turned to face Elias. "They are here to honor you." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Honor me? What did I do?" "You showed us the path," Saren said. "Without you, there would be no future." Elias looked out at the crowd, a strange mixture of humility and discomfort washing over him. "I didn't save your world. You saved it yourselves. I just reminded you what you were capable of." "Even so," Lither said, stepping aside, "your name will be remembered." At the center of the platform stood a newly constructed monument, a towering, crystalline structure etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with a faint rhythmic glow. At its base, written in a flowing script, were words Elias could understand. They read, "Harmony is not found, it is created. In balance, we thrive." Elias's throat tightened as he read the inscription. He reached out, brushing his fingers against the smooth surface. The monument hummed faintly, its resonance familiar like an old friend. "Looks like you figured it out," Elias said softly, his voice carrying a mix of pride and sorrow. Saren stepped forward. "The monument is our reminder of this moment, of you." Elias turned to face the Eltherans, his voice steady but warm. "If I leave you with one thing, let it be this. Balance isn't a destination. It's a journey. You're going to stumble. You're going to fall out of rhythm. But as long as you keep listening, you'll find your way back." The crowd's lights flickered, their glow shifting in a wave of acknowledgement. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on him. "All right," he said, turning back to Saren and Lither. "Time for me to head home. You've got a galaxy to rebuild." Saren's glow dimmed slightly. "Will we see you again?" Elias smiled faintly. "I think you've got this. Besides, I've got a mountain to get back to. The pine trees are probably missing me." Lither extended its arm, a gesture of respect. "Farewell, Elias Cain. Your chaos brought us clarity." Elias chuckled as he shook the crystalline limb. "And your logic gave me a headache. Call it even." As he boarded the vessel that would take him back to Earth, he cast one last glance at the monument and the glowing forms of the Eltherans. A strange warmth filled his chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and the bittersweet realization that he had changed something fundamental in the universe. The ship ascended, breaking through the planet's atmosphere. The Eltheran world became a distant point of light, its glow steady and alive. Elias leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes as the hum of the ship lulled him into a rare moment of peace. When the ship finally touched down in the shadow of the Himalayan mountains, Elias stepped out onto familiar soil. The cool, crisp air carried the scent of pine and earth, grounding him once more. The monastery stood unchanged, its ancient stones weathered but steadfast. Elias walked slowly toward the temple, the weight of his journey finally settling on his shoulders. He stepped onto the platform where it had all begun, lowering himself into a seated position. The wind whispered around him, carrying the faint hum of prayer wheels spinning in the distance. He closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the world envelop him. For the first time in a long time, he felt not just at peace, but connected to the earth, to the cosmos, to the fragile, chaotic beauty of existence. Far above, a faint glimmer appeared in the sky, a crystalline vessel departing, its lights pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm. Elias smiled, his lips moving in a soft whisper. "Sometimes," he said to the wind, "it takes a little humanity to remind the cosmos how to feel." The prayer wheels turned, and the stars watched silently, in perfect harmony,